What if I told you that the secret to compound interest has nothing to do with getting rich enough to buy a Ferrari and everything to do with buying back your Tuesday mornings? We spend our entire lives running on an endless treadmill, convinced that the ultimate goal of investing is to one day afford a lifestyle dripping in luxury. We're told to work hard, save diligently, and let our money grow so that when we're finally old and gray, we can sit on a beach with a fancy drink in our hand. But that's a fundamental misunderstanding of what money actually is. The financial industry has sold us a dream that's entirely built around consumption. They want you to believe that the reward for decades of discipline is a bigger house, a luxury car, or a watch that costs more than most people make in a year. They've convinced us that wealth is loud, visible, and designed to impress other people. Here's the harsh truth. The moment you tie the concept of compound interest to the acquisition of luxury goods, you've already lost the game. You aren't investing to set yourself free. You're investing to upgrade your prison. A nicer car just means higher insurance. A bigger house just means higher property taxes and more rooms to fill with stuff you don't actually need. Wealth is what you don't see. It's the cars you never bought, the designer clothes you left on the rack, and the expensive dinners you declined. Every dollar you spend on visible status symbols is a dollar that could have been deployed to purchase the only asset that actually matters in this life. That asset is time. Time is the ultimate non-renewable resource. You can always make another dollar, but you can never make another minute. Once a Tuesday morning is gone, it's gone forever. Yet, we routinely trade the best years of our lives for pieces of paper that we plan to trade for shiny objects that'll eventually end up in a landfill. Compound interest isn't a luxury fund. It's an autonomy engine. Autonomy is the profound, quiet power to wake up every single day and say, I can do whatever I want today. It's the ability to decline a meeting with a toxic boss. It's the freedom to sit on your porch on a random Tuesday morning, sipping cheap coffee while everyone else is stuck in rush hour traffic. When you stop looking at your investment accounts as future down payments on status symbols, the math completely transforms. You realize that you don't need $5 million to be happy. You just need enough to cover your basic existence, plus a little extra to let the magic of compounding do the heavy lifting in the background. Think about the people you know who are desperately trying to look wealthy. They're exhausted and stretched thin. They're playing a game where the only prize is the privilege of continuing to play. But when you redirect the power of compound interest toward autonomy, you step off that playing field entirely. You stop playing the status game and start playing the freedom game. The beauty of the freedom game is that you don't need to wait 40 years to win it. Every $100 you save today isn't just $100 for retirement. It's an entire day of time freedom purchased for your future self. By the end of this journey, you'll never look at a dollar bill or a Tuesday morning the same way again. To truly understand this shift from luxury to autonomy, we need to look at two very different lives. I want you to imagine two people, Marcus and Elena. On paper, society has a very clear idea of who is winning and who is losing. But when we look under the surface, the math tells a completely different story. Let us start with Marcus. Marcus is a corporate director making $250,000 a year. By every traditional metric, Marcus has made it. He drives a pristine German luxury sedan and lives in a sprawling house in the exact neighborhood you are supposed to live in when you reach his level of success. But the reality of Marcus's life is a grinding marathon. To afford that pristine image, he works 70 hours a week. His mornings begin with stress, his evenings end with urgent emails, and his weekends are just a brief pause before the cycle starts all over again. His massive income is completely swallowed by his massive lifestyle. Marcus is drowning in social debt. This is the invisible obligation we take on to impress people we often do not even like. It is the massive mortgage, the expensive car leases, and the exclusive memberships. Marcus is trapped. He cannot afford to take a break or step down because his social debt demands a massive salary just to keep the lights on. Now, let us look at Elena. Elena makes $70,000 a year as a mid-level project manager. If you put Elena and Marcus side by side, society would assume Elena is falling way behind. She drives an older car, rents a modest apartment, and completely avoids designer labels. But Elena has a secret. In her 20s, while Marcus was busy upgrading his lifestyle with every single promotion, Elena kept her living expenses completely flat. She lived below her means and poured every extra dollar into investments. She ignored the shiny objects and focused entirely on buying her future. Because she front-loaded her investments early on, Elena recently hit a powerful mathematical milestone known as Coast Phi. This means she already has enough money invested so that even if she never contributes another dime, compound interest will grow that portfolio to a fully funded retirement. The heavy lifting is already done. Because the pressure to save for retirement is gone, Elena was able to drastically downshift. She negotiated a part-time schedule and now only works 3 days a week. She brings in just enough money to cover her basic living expenses, which remain incredibly low because she refuses to play the status game. Elena also leverages geographic arbitrage to scale her freedom. She often works remotely from lower-cost cities or even different countries, where her dollars stretch twice as far. She spends her mornings reading, walking, and exploring, not sitting in gridlock traffic stressing about a quarterly review. Marcus has the income, but Elena has the wealth. Marcus has the visible status, but Elena has the actual freedom. If Marcus stops working for a month, his entire financial house of cards begins to wobble and fall apart. He is a highly paid hostage to his own lifestyle choices. If Elena wants to take a month off, she simply does it. Her investments are quietly compounding in the background, working every single day regardless of whether she is sitting at a desk or sitting in a cafe. Her money works for her, whereas Marcus works endlessly for his money. Here is the harsh truth. Society worships Marcus, but it should be taking notes from Elena. Wealth is what you don't see, and Elena's invisible wealth is buying her the absolute best years of her life right now, instead of hoping to enjoy them decades in the future. From the moment we are old enough to understand television commercials and social media feeds, we are handed a very specific script about money. We are taught that the ultimate purpose of working hard is to cross a metaphorical luxury finish line. We imagine a future where we step out of a sleek sports car, walk into a massive foyer with a glittering chandelier, and finally feel like we have arrived. This is the dream we are sold by a culture obsessed with visibility and status. Because we believe this narrative so deeply, we structure our entire financial lives around consumption. Every raise, every bonus, and every promotion immediately gets translated into a lifestyle upgrade. You get a $10,000 bump in your salary, and suddenly you convince yourself that you deserve a nicer car or a more expensive apartment downtown. We call it treating ourselves, but mathematically, we are actually punishing our future selves by extending our mandatory working years. The problem with the luxury finish line is that it is a complete mirage. It constantly moves just out of your reach. You buy the luxury car, and for a few weeks, you feel a massive surge of pride. But then you park next to someone with a newer, faster, more expensive model, and suddenly your achievement feels completely inadequate. You buy the big house, but then you realize you need designer furniture to fill the empty rooms, and a professional landscaping crew to maintain the yard. The finish line just gets pushed further and further away. The math doesn't lie. When you buy into the luxury myth, you are not just spending the money written on the price tag. You are spending the exponential growth that money could have achieved over the next 2 or 3 decades. If you take $500 a month and put it toward a luxury car lease, you are effectively setting fire to the compound interest that $500 could have quietly generated for you in the background. Let us break that math down slowly, because it is the most important concept you will ever learn. $500 a month, invested in a standard index fund returning an average of 8% a year, becomes roughly $750,000 over 30 years. That car is not costing you $500 a month. It is costing you $750,000 in future wealth. It is costing you years of your life that you will now have to spend sitting at a desk just to make up the difference. This is exactly where your entire paradigm has to shift. We have to stop viewing money as a token we exchange for immediate gratification and start viewing it as a seed we plant for future autonomy. The moment you truly internalize that every dollar you spend on status is a dollar that could have been used to buy back your Tuesday mornings, the allure of luxury starts to rapidly fade. You stop wanting to look rich to strangers, and you start wanting to actually be free for yourself. We have to remember that wealth is what you don't see. When you see someone driving a $100,000 car, the only thing you actually know about their finances is that they have $100,000 less than they did before they bought it. You do not see their bank account balance, you do not see their crushing stress levels, and you certainly do not see their time freedom. Very often, the most visibly wealthy people in your neighborhood are the most financially fragile. The real millionaires do not look like the people on television. They look like the high school teacher who drove the same reliable sedan for 15 years and steadily invested her savings month after month. They look like the IT worker who lives in a modest 3-bedroom house and maxes out his retirement accounts every single year without telling anyone. They do not have the shiny objects to show off, but they have something infinitely more valuable. They have absolute options. Society constantly tells us that the reward for extreme discipline is expensive stuff. But stuff requires constant maintenance, heavy insurance, and endless worry. Stuff anchors you to a specific location and a specific high-income requirement. Stuff is heavy, but autonomy is light. The true reward for financial discipline is the complete absence of financial anxiety. It is the ability to sleep soundly at night knowing that if everything falls apart tomorrow, you are going to be just fine. We have to completely rewrite the societal script. The finish line is not a mansion, a yacht, or a closet full of designer shoes. The finish line is the exact moment you realize you no longer have to trade your time for money unless you actively choose to do so. It is the moment you realize that your investments generate enough income to cover your life, rendering your boss, your alarm clock, and your commute completely optional. That is the only finish line actually worth crossing. The societal script around retirement is incredibly depressing when you actually stop to think about it. We're taught that financial responsibility means siphoning off 20% of our paycheck every single month, tossing it into an account, and crossing our fingers. It's presented to us as an endless, grueling marathon. We're supposed to keep our heads down, endure the corporate grind, and wait for that magical age of 65 to finally start living our lives. This script assumes our income is the only thing that builds wealth. But what if the marathon doesn't actually have to last 40 years? What if there's a mathematical tipping point where the heavy lifting is taken completely off your shoulders? This brings us to the crossover point. This is the exact moment when the money your money makes begins to outpace the money that you make. Your portfolio transitions from a passive storage unit into an active employee that works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without ever asking for a sick day. To reach this crossover point faster, you have to understand the mathematics of Coast Fi. Coast Fi dismantles the traditional idea that you must save constantly until the day you retire. It's the specific financial milestone where you front-loaded enough money into your investment accounts that you never have to invest another single dime. Your current principal, left alone to grow through the sheer force of compound interest, will naturally balloon into a fully funded retirement by traditional retirement age. Let's break down the actual numbers so you can visualize this freedom. Imagine you're 25 years old, and you aggressively invest until you have $100,000 in a standard index fund. Then, at age 30, you completely stop. You never put another penny into your retirement accounts. You simply let that money sit there and do what money does best over a long time horizon. If we assume a historically average return of 8% per year, that money will double roughly every 9 years. By the time you're 39, your 100,000 is 200,000. By age 48, it's 400,000. By age 57, it's 800,000. By the time you reach your mid-60s, that original $100,000 has mutated into well over $1 million. You didn't add a single dollar to it for over 3 decades. This mathematical reality changes absolutely everything about how you should view your career. Once you hit your Coast FI number, a massive psychological weight is lifted. You no longer need to earn a surplus income to fund your future. You only need to earn enough to cover your present living expenses. This is a radical shift. You no longer need to chase the promotion, endure the toxic manager, or work 60 hours a week just to hit a savings goal. Reaching Coast Fi gives you the ultimate permission slip to downshift your entire life. If your basic living expenses are only $40,000 a year, and your retirement is fully funded by your past self, you only need to make $40,000. You can quit the stressful corporate job and take a low-stress job that you actually enjoy. You can work part-time or freelance on your own terms. The math doesn't lie. Front-loading your investments buys you the option to coast through the rest of your working years. It proves that compound interest isn't just about making you incredibly rich when you're old. It's about drastically lowering the required effort you have to exert while you're still young, healthy, and capable of enjoying your time freedom. When we talk about the forces that destroy our financial freedom, we usually focus on the obvious villains. We talk about credit card interest rates, terrible stock market timing, or high management fees. But the single biggest destroyer of compound interest is something much more insidious. It is a silent killer of wealth that most people willingly invite into their lives every single day. I call this concept social debt. Social debt is the invisible, crushing obligation we take on to impress people we often do not even like. It is the psychological tax we pay to maintain a specific image in the eyes of our neighbors, our coworkers, and our followers on social media. Unlike standard financial debt, which you can track on a spreadsheet, social debt is a parasite that lives in your ego. It convinces you that your self-worth is tied entirely to your visible consumption. The status game usually starts small. You get your first real job, and suddenly you feel a subtle pressure to stop carrying a cheap backpack and buy a designer briefcase. Then you get a promotion, and you decide that successful people don't live in modest apartments, so you stretch your budget to buy a larger house. You tell yourself that you're just upgrading your life, but what you're actually doing is stepping onto a treadmill that never stops. As your income grows, your social debt inflates to absorb every extra dollar. You lease a brand new luxury SUV every 3 years because you can't bear the thought of pulling into the company parking lot in an older sedan. You are no longer making financial decisions based on what brings you joy. You are making decisions based on what you think other people expect a successful person to look like. This is a devastating trap because it completely short-circuits the math of compound interest. Every time you upgrade your lifestyle to play the status game, you are taking dollars that could have been quietly multiplying in the background and burning them on the altar of public opinion. You are voluntarily trading decades of future autonomy for a fleeting moment of external validation. Here's the harsh truth. The people you are trying so desperately to impress are not actually thinking about you. They are too busy agonizing over their own social debt and worrying about what you think of them. You are sacrificing your life energy, your Tuesday mornings, and your ultimate peace of mind to win a game where the only prize is the privilege of working until you are 70 years old. The psychological toll of carrying massive social debt is exhausting. When your entire identity is built around visible wealth, you become a hostage to your own possessions. You can't take a lower-paying job that you actually love because your massive mortgage demands a high income. You are trapped in a golden cage of your own design, completely chained to a paycheck just to keep up the illusion. To escape this cycle, you have to perform a brutal audit of your life. You have to be willing to look a little bit weird to the people around you. You have to be okay with driving the older car and living in the smaller house. Remember, wealth is what you don't see. When you finally opt out of the status game, your savings rate will explode, pushing you closer to absolute freedom. One of the biggest lies we are told about wealth is that it is strictly tied to a specific location. The traditional script dictates a very rigid path. You are supposed to move to a massively expensive coastal city, secure a high-paying corporate job, and then spend the next 40 years battling an astronomical cost of living just to maintain your position. We accept this as a necessary evil because we believe high incomes only exist in high-cost environments. But in a modern, hyper-connected world, tying your physical location to your income is a massive mathematical error. This brings us to one of the most powerful concepts in modern wealth building. It is a strategy called geographic arbitrage. At its core, geographic arbitrage is incredibly simple. It means earning your money in a strong economy with high wages, but choosing to spend your money in an area with a significantly lower cost of living. You are intentionally exploiting the price differences between two different locations to dramatically scale your financial freedom. Let us look at the mathematical reality of this strategy. Imagine you have built a portfolio of $1 million. If you follow the standard 4% rule, which states you can safely withdraw 4% of your invested assets each year, your portfolio will generate $40,000 of annual income. If you live in a major metropolitan hub like London or New York, $40,000 a year is barely enough to survive. You will constantly feel like you are falling behind. Because of this, society tells you that $1 million is not enough. They tell you to get back to work and grind for another 15 years until you hit $3 million. But what if the problem isn't the size of your portfolio? What if the problem is simply your zip code? If you take that exact same $40,000 a year and move to a quiet coastal community, a smaller Midwestern town, or even international destinations in Southern Europe or Southeast Asia, your financial reality completely transforms. In these locations, $40,000 a year doesn't just buy survival. It buys absolute abundance. It buys a beautiful home, incredible fresh food, and endless leisure time. The math doesn't lie. Lowering your overhead by moving to a cheaper location has the exact same mathematical impact as working for an extra decade to double your investment portfolio. You don't have to endure 10 more years of corporate stress to achieve time freedom. You simply have to be willing to redefine where you call home. Your wealth is entirely relative to your burn rate. People often push back against this idea. They assume that moving to a lower-cost area means sacrificing their quality of life. But often, the exact opposite is true. Many people find that leaving hyper-competitive, hyper-expensive cities actually improves their health and happiness. They find tighter communities, less gridlock traffic, and a much slower, more intentional pace of life. When you pair the magic of compound interest with geographic arbitrage, you create an absolute life hack. You completely decouple your time from your location. You stop playing the impossible game of trying to out-earn an inflated housing market, and you start playing a game where the rules are heavily stacked in your favor. This is how you unlock time freedom in your 30s or 40s, instead of waiting until you are old and exhausted. If you achieve Coast Fi and then utilize geographic arbitrage, your required working hours drop to almost zero. You can work remotely a few days a month, consult part-time, or step away completely. True wealth is the absolute freedom to wake up wherever you choose, completely unburdened by the cost of your surroundings. There is a tragic flaw in the way traditional financial advice is taught. We are conditioned to treat our younger years purely as an accumulation phase. We put our heads down and grind through our 20s, 30s, and 40s, telling ourselves that we will finally start enjoying our lives when we hit age 65. We defer our dreams, our travels, and our deep relationships, assuming that the ultimate prize is dying with a massive pile of money in a brokerage account. But the reality of extreme frugality and delayed gratification has a very dark side. If you spend 40 years depriving yourself just to see a number go up on a screen, you risk making the most devastating miscalculation of all. You risk dying without having truly lived. Hoarding capital forever at the expense of your youth is a profound failure, both mathematically and emotionally. This brings us to a beautiful concept called memory dividends. Just like financial investments compound over time to create more money, the experiences you invest in early in life compound to create more joy. When you take a 3-week backpacking trip through Europe at age 25, the initial joy of that trip is just the principal investment. For the next 50 years, you get to look back, tell stories, and bond with your friends over that shared experience. Every single time you reminisce about that trip, you are earning a memory dividend. If you wait until you are 70 to take that exact same trip, you might have the money to stay in nicer hotels, but your physical energy will be completely different. More importantly, you will only have 10 or 20 years left to collect those memory dividends. By delaying the experience just to maximize your wealth, you actually bankrupt your bank of memories. Here's the harsh truth. The ultimate price of playing the status game is suffocating regret. When you are lying on your deathbed, you are not going to care about the luxury sedan you leased in your 30s. You are not going to care that your kitchen had imported marble countertops or that you wore expensive designer clothes to the office holiday party. You are going to care about the Tuesday mornings you gave away. You are going to remember the times you missed your child's soccer game because a toxic boss demanded you stay late to finish a meaningless spreadsheet. You are going to regret the years you spent trapped in social debt, exhausting yourself to impress neighbors who never even cared about you in the first place. You traded the most vibrant years of your life for invisible points in a game that doesn't actually matter. Time is the only truly non-renewable resource in the universe. We treat money as if it is sacred and time as if it is infinite, when the exact opposite is true. You can lose everything in the stock market and eventually build it all back, but you cannot buy back a single hour of your life. The tragedy of the traditional retirement path is that it asks you to trade the one thing you can never get more of for something that can be printed by the millions. This is why balancing compound interest with active, intentional living is the ultimate puzzle of personal finance. Yes, you need to save and invest to secure your future autonomy, but you also have to aggressively spend on the experiences that will yield lifelong memory dividends. You have to find the delicate balance between buying your future freedom and actually enjoying the present moment. The people who win this game are the ones who realize that wealth is not the finish line. Wealth is simply the vehicle that drives you to the finish line. And the finish line is a life lived completely on your own terms, with absolutely zero regrets. When you finally connect all of these pieces together, your entire worldview shifts. You transition from seeing money as a vehicle for endless consumption to seeing it as a precise instrument for buying autonomy. When you finally realize that the true utility of wealth isn't to buy a sports car, but to buy back your Tuesday mornings, you immediately stop playing the game that society wants you to play. You step off the treadmill of comparison and begin constructing a life that actually belongs to you. The highest dividend that money will ever pay you is the power to say no. It's the profound ability to walk away from things that drain your life energy. It's the power to say no to a toxic boss, no to a 60-hour work week, and no to a soul-crushing commute. When you have no financial cushion, every demand placed upon you is a mandatory command. But when you front-loaded your investments and harnessed the power of compound interest, those demands become entirely optional. For decades, we've been conditioned to believe that a luxury watch, a massive mortgage, or a designer wardrobe is the ultimate flex. But the real flex is freedom. The real flex is waking up on a random Wednesday morning, looking out your window, and realizing that the next 24 hours belong entirely to you. It's the quiet confidence of knowing that your financial foundation is solid, completely independent of whatever the corporate ladder or the status game dictates. It can feel terrifying to break away from the societal script. When everyone around you is running as fast as they can to acquire more social debt, choosing to live below your means and prioritize time can make you feel completely alienated. You'll watch your peers buy bigger houses and lease newer cars, and you might briefly wonder if you're making a mistake. But you have to remember that the math doesn't lie. Their visible wealth is almost always hiding invisible stress. By understanding concepts like Cost-FI and the crossover point, you realize that traditional retirement at age 65 is an outdated concept. You don't have to wait until your body is tired and your best years are behind you to start living. By aggressively front-loading your investments and letting the math take over, you can transition from mandatory labor to optional labor decades earlier than the people around you. You take the immense pressure off your present self by letting compound interest do the heavy lifting. Think back to Elena. The quiet wealth she built gave her the absolute ultimate luxury, which is total peace of mind. She doesn't need to prove anything to anyone because her financial foundation speaks for itself in the form of deep, unshakable autonomy. She used geographic arbitrage to lower the cost of her freedom, and she spends her time collecting memory dividends instead of depreciating liabilities. She engineered a life where time is her primary currency. Compound interest is a mathematical miracle, but only if you point it in the exact right direction. If you point it toward your ego, it'll eventually trap you in a cycle of endless labor to maintain a fake image. But if you point it toward your autonomy, it'll buy you the greatest life imaginable. It'll buy you the space to breathe, the time to think, and the freedom to truly exist. If this video opened your eyes or gave you a new perspective, hit that like button. Let me know in the comments what your ideal future actually looks like, and make sure to subscribe for more. Remember, wealth isn't just a number in a bank account, it's the freedom to design your own life.